Ladies, gentlemen, and serum of all ages, No Rest for the Wicked can be an absolutely brutal game in a million different ways, but while there is of course smoothing to be done to fix that in the future, hopefully before proper launch, in fact, for the most part, once you reach the proper later sections of the game, though, a lot of the problems really can be solved, but in order to actually have that happen, you need to sort of prepare yourself for it ahead of time and work towards it early. Put simply, you can get through the game by just pushing through the story and the quests and killing things in a brute force type of way, but if you do that, not only are you making your journey more difficult than it needs to be in the short term, but you are also just sort of moving things later on that will still need to get done eventually. So today, we're going to go over 10 mistakes that I've learned not to make in my own game time so far, as well as watching Josh play the whole thing in another build and just seeing other people play in general. First things first, food is important. We all know that though, right? I'm not saying, hey, those of you not eating food, eat food, because obviously every player is aware the system exists as it is the only way to consistently heal early on in the game. But there is another stage to this. While early food can do things like grant 30 instant health or even base ingredients, just slight regen over time, it can be a big mistake to not put a bit more effort into this system. If you upgrade Gordon's restaurant in the town upgrade menu, his little stand will change into a full-on indoor establishment. He will sell higher quality meals inside, as well as ingredients and recipes too, and you'll gain access to the oven, which lets you cook these more involved recipes. For a couple examples of why the best food currently obtainable is actually worth pursuing, there's this steak meal which gives you a massive chunk of instant health, as well as a long-lasting chunky max health bonus, which is great for survivability. And the opposite of that is the shepherd's pie, which also gives you a lot of instant health, but then a slight damage buff instead of defense. It's hard to overstate just how much this system can actually have an effect on your combat if you have these buffs just permanently active. It is quite a fair bit, which is absolutely achievable as well with a bit of gold and the time to set this camp up to begin with, on which note, our next two mistakes are quite related. The first is upgrade your town. I know a lot of people want to just sort of look at this as a Souls-like or a classic ARPG, where your goals are go forward, kill the enemy, progress, and ignore all the little mechanics. But this game has a whole detailed town upgrading, housing, and crafting system in it too that will simply reward you more and more the more that you actually respect and interact with them. For example, if you get your blacksmith to rank 3, he will sell big, beefy grade 3 gear and some crafting recipes for grade 3 gear as well. Both of these things being easier than just upgrading to that point normally by a fair margin. There's honestly tons of different benefits to each town upgrade, and we have a full video dedicated to exploring every option that you get from this, so you can check that out if you want. But the long and short term of it is just don't ignore the town upgrade system. As well, a fun interaction worth noting, the town upgrades take time after being initiated, 1 hour for the first upgrades, 4 hours for the second one, but the timer is based on your device time. So if you start the timer, close the game, manually change the time on your PC on the clock itself, then reopen the game, the job will be done in an instant. The second part of that is don't ignore gathering resources. In order to do the town upgrades, you need tons of raw resources of varying kinds, coming from pretty much every area of the map in early access. These are littered just all over the place, but they aren't overly shiny or glowing or anything like that. They don't stick out a crazy amount, so you can easily just forget about them and walk past. But if you have the requisite tool and you see a tree or an ore node or some plants or a shovelable hole or a fishing spot, you should absolutely interact with it. Shoveling, lumbering, and mining are the main 3 things that you need for town upgrades specifically, but the other things will still help you out in general regardless. In order to help with that too, it's worth noting that there are upgraded versions of each tool, generally becoming purchasable from the associated vendor at higher ranks in town, with blacksmiths selling pickaxes to show you what I mean here. That said, your immediate response to that is probably, yeah, okay, gathering resources is good, but where the hell am I going to put them? Inventory space can be a bit of an issue. Well, the next mistake is not buying a house. You unlock the ability to do this a couple of hours into the story, and there are multiple options for this. The most convenient one is 20 gold, the homestead in the town square, but it doesn't really matter which one you choose, and you can also buy furniture from the woodshop vendor that acts as storage, and that can be placed in houses. At rank 2, he sells a little chest that holds up to 20 items each, and at rank 3, he has a cupboard that holds 30 items, but is locked to only consumables. Either way, the point of this is that you can create near infinite storage for a bit of a gold cost if you buy a house. So even if you don't care about the aesthetics and quaintness of the housing system, even though they do cost a fair bit of coin as well, you shouldn't just ignore that the system exists. Then we have our next fun one. This is a more minor thing, but something that can definitely affect you in various ways throughout your greater journey with the game, which is the resting system. You can either get or make a bed to place in player housing, or you can repair the inn building through the town management system. Either one of these will give you a place where you can rest. If you then lay down in a bed, like this in those locations, and then log out of the game while you're in the bed, if you're offline for at least 4 hours, you get a health buff somewhere around 20% for the next 30 minutes. The fun part here is, as I mentioned earlier, the game runs its timers like this off of device time. So again, if you really are struggling with something and really think that 20% bonus health might help you, you could either just go log out for 4 hours, take a break, come at it fresh, crash with the buff, or you could just pull a quick restart and time change on your device to go right back in. Past that, then we have the location of a somewhat hidden vendor. This gentleman you unlock in the last section of the story for the game in early access while adventuring through the quarry. He is not a required find, but he is pretty hard to miss, and after you free him, he tells you that he will find you in Sacrament when he's ready. But what he means is he'll post up in this really obscure and weird spot over here without any symbol on the map, and you have to find him. The mistake then is not knowing where this vendor is, that it exists in the first place, or using it, because every vendor reset, he seems to change his stock, but his inventory is just a gigantic list of completely randomly rolled gear from the game, which can sound a bit hectic, but essentially it's like you just killed hundreds of enemies, and this is everything they dropped, various grades, various power levels, but now you just have to choose what you actually like the look of, and you have to pay for the specific items. These items seem totally random, as far as I can tell, which means that there is potential for some extremely good stuff in here. So while every item isn't necessarily worth your attention, the shop as a whole definitely is. After that, just a much more simpler PSA quickly, which is stop paying so much attention to damage numbers on weapons, at least when comparing different weapon types, because in this game, attack numbers are the damage per hit, not damage per second, which to put simply means that a two-handed weapon will always have a higher attack number than a one-handed weapon or a pair of daggers, because they are smaller per hit but attacking much more frequently. I've seen way too many people just ignore smaller weapons in this game because number lower must mean bad, but trust me, when you really go in on the faster weapons, they can absolutely wreck things. So I just wanted to make sure I said, hey, don't blindly follow the equipment number, it isn't quite that simple. Next up, this is a mistake that I made early, but then sort of continued to make it a completely different way afterwards, which is don't ignore the enchantment vendor. This vendor has a number of different functions, but one of the main ones is enchanting white equipment to turn it into blues and purples, giving it tons of skills and affixes. This can be a somewhat expensive service to use, but the mistake that you can make early is not interacting with it at all, because doing so can make you a lot stronger very quickly. That said, the further mistake is thinking that you should enchant everything, because that's not necessarily always the case, and that is a higher end decision making concept. Common equipment has no stat affixes, yes, but they have 4 rune slots and gem slots as well. If you enchant a common, it loses 3 of its gem slots and 2 of its rune slots, so it's not necessarily a direct upgrade, it is a trade. Early game, that trade is almost always worth it, but as you start to move forward, as you start collecting more gems and runes to actually craft with, white items can become pretty strong. Most specifically, helmets and chest pieces have really good gem skills, as gems do have different effects depending on the slot, but the helmet and the chest are quite strong for gems. So there are various points if you have the actual right gems for your setup, where having common items in those slots is actually better. The same though can be said for weapons, but specifically only weapons that you want to use for their rune skills. If you're wanting to run a heavy focus build or a spellcaster type setup, having white weapons lets you have more rune skill options, more variety, and there's a lot that you can actually do with that. For example, number 9, the mistake is paying for repairs, because once you reach a certain point, you never have to do that again. How? Any white weapon and a bit of silver to pay for the craft, as well as an armor piece or weapon that provides health regen in some way, ideally passive health regen just as a normal stat on gear. This we can then use to obviously just heal for free out of combat, right? Which enables us to use the channel rune skill. This you can buy at the enchanter at level 1, and it lets you trade 1 health for 2 focus, as long as you hold down the button. And if you have health regen, that will give you an infinite source of focus as long as you're out of combat. Well, here comes part 3, the repair rune skill, which you can also buy from level 1 enchanter. This costs 150 focus to use, so you do need to put at least 3 points into your focus stat so that your maximum focus is above 150, but it literally just repairs your durability of everything that is equipped by a good chunk. And of course, because you have the permanent healing and a way to convert health to focus, this means because of this, you never have to spend money on repairs ever again once you have these items. Finally today, your last mistake is not using a bow in your offhand. I mentioned earlier that it is wrong to only use two-handed weapons because you see higher numbers, and why that doesn't tell the whole story, but the second part of that is the utility of a one-handed weapon, as one-handers let you also use an offhand, and the best offhands in the game are bows. Here's the real kicker though, bows in the game count as offhands. You can't fire them as a standard thing like regular weapons, but you can fire a normal charged arrow for 15 focus, or a multi-shot burst for 100. Both of these attacks though are extremely high damage to focus cost ratio for whatever reason, so they're extremely effective at spending focus compared to like any anything else in the game really, with the basic 15 focus shot being a really good chunk of damage from obviously a safe range. If you are using a one-handed weapon, you should absolutely have one of these on your offhand, and given the multiple different weapon slots in the game, you can definitely work this into your build for some strong ranged options no matter what your main playstyle is. The other fun thing here is that there are affixes that you can get on gear, like gain 10% of focus on focus use, and you can get more than 150 max focus very easily. So logically, if that works as it reads, assuming it does, you get 10% of your max focus per arrow shot that you do. Given that the arrow shot costs 15 focus, you should be able to infinitely use that as a proper consistent weapon. But I don't have that affix to actually test that myself for sure. That just about does it for today then, everyone. Just a list of mistakes that I have made and the solutions that I found to those. Things that I think will more than likely help a lot of you out there watching this, playing No Rest for the Wicked, whether you be someone in the first opening area of the game or someone already finished the story for early access. I hope something on here will help you out and be actual new information too. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.